The US dollar has long been considered the most powerful and stable currency in the world. It is the default reserve currency for global trade, the benchmark for commodity pricing, and the backbone of international banking. But as of 2025, cracks are starting to show. Inflation, rising debt, global political shifts, and the emergence of new economic blocs are quietly challenging the dollar's dominance. For small business owners, this change is more than just a headline. It could reshape how they price, source, scale, and survive. Currency strength affects everything. When the dollar is strong, American businesses that import materials or work with foreign vendors benefit from cheaper costs. However, a strong dollar also makes U.S. exports more expensive, which can reduce demand abroad. On the other hand, a weakening dollar may benefit exporters but increase the cost of imported goods, raw materials, and even software or services paid in foreign currencies. For small businesses, these fluctuations are not theoretical. They directly impact margins. The recent global environment has brought this issue to the forefront. The Federal Reserve has faced mounting pressure to manage inflation without triggering a recession. Meanwhile, the national debt has ballooned past $35 trillion. These economic realities cast a long shadow over the perceived stability of the dollar. And as more countries explore alternatives to the dollar for international trade, such as the Chinese yuan or regional digital currencies, the monopoly of the dollar is gradually eroding. You may be wondering, is this just another economic cycle? Historically, the US dollar has weathered recessions, crises, and inflationary periods. But 2025 is different. This time, the pressure is coming from both outside and inside. Internationally, countries are reducing their dependence on the dollar. China and Russia have signed multiple trade deals denominated in their own currencies. Various nations have proposed alternatives to the dollar for international settlements. Even long-time allies are experimenting with bilateral trade in local currencies. Domestically, consumer confidence in the dollar is shifting. As purchasing power declines, small business owners are experiencing a dual strain: rising costs and decreasing customer tolerance for price hikes. If you run a business that depends on imported inventory, you may already be paying more without realizing that the dollar is part of the equation. And if your customers are pulling back on spending, you may be caught in the middle, squeezed between higher costs and tighter wallets. What does this mean for your business operations? For starters, pricing strategy needs to become dynamic, not static. Many small business owners set prices based on cost plus models, assuming stable costs. But in a volatile currency environment, prices must account for potential future currency losses. This means staying informed about exchange rates and understanding how currency fluctuations affect your profit margins. Even if you operate entirely within the US, your vendors might not, and their prices will reflect the currency situation. Next, consider your supply chain. Are you dependent on foreign manufacturers or software providers who invoice in euros, yuan, or other currencies? A weakening dollar can lead to sudden cost increases if those invoices are not hedged or anticipated. One strategy is to diversify suppliers across multiple regions, or even within the US, to reduce exposure. Another is to negotiate contracts that lock in exchange rates or explore local currency accounts if you operate internationally. Now, let us talk about payment systems. Many modern small businesses use global platforms: Stripe, PayPal, Shopify, Upwork, Amazon, where currency conversion is automatic but not necessarily favorable. A weakening dollar means that you may be paying more in conversion fees or receiving less for international transactions. Understanding your financial tools and how they process foreign currency is no longer optional. It is an essential part of your cash flow management. At this point, you might be asking, is there any benefit to a weakening dollar for small business owners? Surprisingly, yes. If you export physical products, digital goods, or services, a weaker dollar makes your offerings more affordable to foreign customers. This can open doors to new markets. If you run a consulting agency, design firm, or educational service that serves global clients, this is a unique time to scale internationally. Your US-based services may suddenly appear as a bargain to foreign buyers. But here is the catch: global growth requires infrastructure. If you are expanding internationally, you need systems that handle foreign invoicing, cross-border payments, tax compliance, and customer service across time zones. Many small businesses neglect this planning and end up overwhelmed. So while the weakening dollar can be a growth lever, it demands preparation, discipline, and strategic scaling. Let us re-engage with a deeper question. What does it really mean when a currency loses power? It means that people, businesses, and governments start to lose confidence in its ability to store value, facilitate trade, and reflect a stable economy. And that loss of confidence spreads like a virus. When international partners begin favoring alternative currencies, the global demand for the dollar weakens. When investors lose trust, they demand higher interest rates on U.S. debt. And when the government prints more dollars to cover shortfalls, the value of every existing dollar falls further. For small business owners, this loss of confidence shows up in subtle but critical ways. Your savings might lose value. Your purchasing power might shrink. Your credit options might become more expensive. Even if you are profitable, inflation-adjusted returns may be falling. You might feel like you are running harder just to stand still, and that feeling is not imagined. It is the real, world result of currency devaluation. What can you do to protect yourself? First, get educated. Follow economic indicators, not just headlines. Learn the basics of monetary policy, debt markets, and foreign exchange. Subscribe to economic newsletters, listen to macroeconomic podcasts, and understand what the Federal Reserve says and does. You do not need a degree in finance to interpret these trends. You need curiosity, awareness, and discipline. Second, diversify your income streams. If your entire business depends on U.S. consumers and domestic pricing, you are highly vulnerable to dollar-related changes. Consider adding global clients, affiliate partnerships, subscription services, or digital products that scale beyond borders. The more revenue you earn in multiple currencies, the more resilient your business becomes in a weakening dollar environment. Third, revisit your asset strategy. If your business holds significant cash reserves, consider hedging. This could involve placing some assets in foreign currency accounts, commodity-linked savings, or even crypto assets if you are informed and cautious. Holding everything in dollars in 2025 is not risk-free. Just as you diversify your marketing or staffing, you should consider diversifying your asset exposure. Fourth, communicate with your vendors and clients. If you work internationally, talk about currency expectations up front. Negotiate terms that protect both sides. Explore multi-currency pricing, build in buffer zones, and offer incentives for bulk payments. Smart currency management can become a competitive advantage if you handle it with transparency and strategy. Fifth, focus on efficiency. In a tightening currency environment, waste is amplified. Review your expenses, automate what you can, and cut non-essential costs. Currency weakness often triggers inflation in areas like logistics, energy, and digital subscriptions. The leaner your operations, the more room you have to absorb currency shocks without passing pain to your customers. You may be wondering, is the US dollar going to collapse? That is unlikely. The dollar still commands massive global trust, and many countries hold it in their reserves. However, the trajectory is clear. Its dominance is being diluted. What used to be unquestioned authority is now contested leadership. And while the collapse is unlikely, continued weakening is possible. And for entrepreneurs, it is enough to trigger major consequences. In practical terms, this means planning for a future where the dollar is not the only currency that matters. Small business owners who adapt early, who build flexible systems, dynamic pricing, and global networks, will have a significant edge. Those who ignore the signals may find themselves trapped in a shrinking margin environment with fewer options and greater risks. In 2025, business success is no longer just about selling a great product. It is about reading the economic room. It is about recognizing that your money is not just green. It is a signal, a tool, and a risk. How you handle that money, how you shield it, and how you grow it will determine how far your business can go. If you found this valuable, the next video explains which countries are quietly ditching the dollar and how that affects your pricing, sourcing, and long-term stability. Because what is happening globally will soon show up in your bank account and being unprepared is no longer an option.